You're in the military with Summary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. According to information we have, the Russians began preparation before the next massive strike. Russia has begun preparation for the next massive strike involving strategic aviation, ballistic missiles and other components, monitoring channel said. And the most important thing that this attack most likely is going to be the main attack of the winter of 2026. Not the attack when the Russians use their rationing system, but this one. And most likely, this attack, the possible task of this attack is to destroy or to damage significantly the energy infrastructure of Ukraine during the next several days. Another important article was published by pro-Russian sources and pro-Ukrainian sources as well. The Russian army has prepared hypersonic missiles of different types for the next massive attack. New missiles for strategic bombers have been preliminarily developed and are being prepared for use according to the monitoring resources. We are talking about Ha-99 hypersonic air-launched cruise missile, we are talking about Ha-MTS hypersonic air-launched anti-ship missile, and we are talking about Ha-BDK air-launched cruise missile. So they are very fast missiles, as you can see. For example, the speed of Ha-99 can be up to 6,600 kilometers per hour, and the range is up to 5,500 kilometers. So we see and we understand that most likely Ukraine don't have any weapon, that any air defense system that can do anything with these types of weapon. So the next attack most likely is going to take place within the next several days, maybe even between the 11th and the 12th of January of 2026, so during the next night. At the same time, Ukrainians continue bombing and attacking the cities and towns and regions along the border with Ukraine. During the previous 24 hours, according to pro-Russian sources, the city of Voronezh was under attack. Ukraine used hundreds or dozens of drones with the purpose to attack military infrastructure. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that just during the 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. of the 11th of the 10th of January 2026, Russians managed to bring down up to 33 drones of the armed forces of Ukraine. And during the night, we received lots of videos from the city of Voronezh. We will adjust the map in this area with the purpose to get a better picture about the situation in this area. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very important updates, and first let's talk about the Kupiansk direction. During the previous 12 hours, another video was published from the settlement by the name of Podolets. So this is the video that was published by a pro-Russian source. Here we can see a Russian soldier that was, let's say, waving with the Russian flag in the most southwestern part of the settlement by the name of Podole. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map. I would like to remind you that several days ago, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the settlement of Podole was completely captured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. This this report was published on the 4th of January of 2026. Based on that report, we adjusted the map. So this is the situation by the end of the 3rd of January. This is the end of the 4th of January. But during the 4th of January, the Russians didn't publish anything that can confirm Russian control over the territory. First videos with flags were published just on the 8th of January of 2026, and this video was published by a pro-Russian source. Here we can see how the Russian drone was flying above the settlement of Podole, mainly above its eastern part, and during this video we can see at least 2 episodes when Russians were raising their flags. So this is the first episode that took place in the northern part of the settlement, and this is the second flag that was raised in the southeastern part. Based on this video, we adjusted the map on the 8th of January as following. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. And today, by the morning of the 11th of January 2026, a third video with the third flag was published, but this time from the southwestern part. So we still haven't received anything from the central part of Podole, from the northern part and its northwestern part. So we believe that there are still very heavy clashes, that both the Russians and the Ukrainians are trying to improve their positions, but it seems that the process is inevitable. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Liman direction, but telling the truth, it's more precisely to call this direction the Izium direction. It seems that Russians managed to break through Ukrainian defense, and basically the Ukrainian defense in this area collapsed completely. So these are the changes on the ground between the previous days. This is the situation in this area on the 8th of the January of 2026, and this is exactly the moment when pro-Ukrainian sources published several articles related to the situation in deep rear. In this article, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the armed forces of the Russian Federation, the sabotage and reconnaissance group, managed to enter the settlement of Lazova and to spread leaflets suggesting Ukrainian citizens to surrender, not to surrender, but to leave this territory, because the Russians are going to begin a major offensive operation in this area. And right after this article, right after these reports were published, the map began adjusting. The map began changing. So this is the situation by the end of the 9th of January. First, Russia's groups were discovered in the eastern part of the settlement of Svetogorsk. By the end of the 10th of January, first Russia's group were discovered in the territory of the settlement of Alexandragrad. And by the morning of the 11th of January of 2026, the map has been adjusted once again. So, and this is the video from the settlement of Yarova. Here we can see two Russian soldiers that were moving through the southeastern part of the settlement. The Russians were entering the building, most likely where Russian soldiers were located from another group. So it seems that the Russians were trying to accumulate themselves in this area. We see another soldier, or maybe a civilian, very difficult to say, but one thing is clear: the Russians are taking the settlement of Yarova in pincers, and maybe the settlement was already captured, who knows. Furthermore, we have changes that were provided by a neutral mapper. According to his report, Russians managed to improve their positions also in the northwestern part of the settlement. Furthermore, as you can see, the Russians managed to maintain the line between the village of Alexandrovka and the settlement of Karovy Yar. So these are the changes, and it seems that this is a real breakthrough. The Ukrainians are not able to stabilize the situation, and most likely the Russians will intensify their activities exactly in this area with the purpose to establish complete control over the north and the most northern part of the Donetsk region, and to begin advancing further in the direction of the river Oskol, of the settlement of Oskol, and in the direction of the M03 highway that connects the city of Slaviansk and the city of Kharkiv itself. So we are going to see lots of updates from this area. Another important thing is that Russians, according to pro-Russian sources, managed to enter the city of Liman itself from its southeastern part. So these are the changes on the ground, and these changes were provided by a very reliable pro-Russian source. So let's wait and see what is going to be next, but if this information is correct, then we can say that the major battle for the city of Liman has begun. Now let's talk about the most important direction, about the Konstantinovka direction. The Russians launched the major offensive operation in this area several days ago. So this is the way, this is the map, and these are the changes on the map between the previous days. As you can see, according to this number of icons, it seems that the Russian major offensive operation in the area of the city of Konstantinovka started around between the 6th and the 7th of January of 2026. We have a lots of icons, we have a lots of roads, we have a lots of updates published by different sources, and all of them are telling us just about one thing. The Russians began advancing from the south and the southwestern directions with the purpose to answer the settlements of Berystok and Ilinka, and to tighten the news around the main Ukraine's logistic roads that go in the direction of the city of Konstantinovka. And starting on the 9th or 10th of January, we began adjusting the map. This is the first adjustment that was made by the morning of the 10th of January of 2026. And according to this update, the Russians answered the settlement of Ilinka from the southwest. The Russians managed to capture up to 50% of the settlement of Berystok. Russians improved their positions in the central part of the settlement along N32 highway in the area of the railway station, and Russians answered the northeastern part of the settlement of Konstantinovka. The Russians answered the Novodmitrievka. So these are the changes that were made by the end of the 10th of January, and this is the map by the beginning of the 11th of January. According to neutral mappers, the Russians are about to establish complete control over several pockets pockets that are still exists to the south of the city of Konstantinovka. This is the first pocket to the north of the Kliban-Bytska water reserve. So there are strongholds, trenches, and fortifications of the armored forces of Ukraine, and the Russians are just trying to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this pocket or to encircle Ukrainians. And according to the same sources, there is another pocket which is located between the settlements of Berestok, Stepanovka, and Alexandra Kalinova. So this is the second pocket. Pro-Russian sources are saying that there are no pockets, that Russians managed to establish control over everything, but neutral mappers say that there are still a pocket, and Russians are trying to force Ukrainians to fall back from this area in the direction of the city of Sel. As we discussed in the previous video, the Russians are trying right now to establish control over everything to the south of the N20 road, but control over this territory will not allow the Russians to advance further and faster in the northern direction, because there is still a very huge gap between Russian positions. For example, the distance between Russian positions that goes through the main logistic line is around 17 kilometers. So we're talking about this logistic line. This is the most important logistic arteria. We're talking about N20 road or 523 road. This is the main logistic arteria of the armored forces of Ukraine. And if Ukraine saves control over the territory, they will have more chances to hold the city of Konstantinovka for as long as possible. So that is why, and due to this situation, we believe that Russians in coming days will try to intensify their offensive operation with the purpose to establish complete control over the settlements that are located to the west and the southwest of the city of Konstantinovka. We're talking about the villages of Raskoshna, Dovga, Balka, and Stepanovka. So we expect a very powerful offensive operation carried out by Russians exactly in this area. And the next stage of Russian offensive could be additional progress in the northern direction with the purpose to establish complete control over the settlement of Nikolaevka, and with the purpose to get as close as possible to the same N20 road from the southwest and from the west. And if Russians are able to break through Ukrainian defense, as we've just discussed, only this way the Russians will have big chances to establish complete control over the city of Konstantinovka within winter or at least early spring of 2026. So most likely this is what we're going to see during the next months. The Konstantinovka battle has become the major battle of the middle and late winter military campaign. The Russians used all their forces from the Pokrovsk direction, and they have redeployed them in this area. We haven't received anything from the Pokrovsk direction during the previous 24 hours, because neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians are ready for any offensive or counter-offensive action. At the same time, both the Russians and the Ukrainians are redeploying everything they have with the purpose to fight for the city of Konstantinovka. So the battle has begun. Let's wait and see what is going to be next. As for the Zaporozhye direction, during the previous 24 hours, just a small correction of the map was recorded in the area of the settlement of Priluki. So not just during the previous 2 days, there were huge changes. This is the first update, this is the second update. So as you can see, the Russians are advancing from the north in the southern direction, trying to establish complete control over every single stronghold and let's say stronghold and trench along this Zaporozhye defense layer. And that's it for the short video. Military with Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.